I heartily welcome you all to the inaugural session of today IIHSG International Conference 2021 on Gender Security and Global Politics, organized by Indian Institute of Human Security and Governance, Delhi, in collaboration with the Center for International Studies and Diplomacy, SOAS, University of London, and Department of International Relations, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh, and SRKP Government PG College, Kishangarh, Ajmer, Rajasthan, India. As you know, security is a contested concept in global politics, especially international relations. Security often treated as a sole property of masculinized politics of realism. But security and gender, both the terms, has multifaceted uses. If insecurity can be understood by vulnerability, then you might agree that every gender is vulnerable in pandemic time as it affected both physical and mental security of every individual irrespective of race, region, religion or gender. If we talk about global politics, the recent pandemic has worsened conflict dynamics also. It resulted in unprecedented expansion of government power. Approximately 84 countries have declared a state of emergency and at least 38 countries have restricted freedom of the press during pandemic. Therefore, we can underline a paradigm shift in security concept where thrust has been shifted from external to internal security. COVID-19 pandemic has changed all equations of power and multinational corporate politics of globalization, and world is now started to understand the meaning of self-reliance. There is a myth that men fight wars to protect vulnerable people in society. In this new war against virus and vulnerability, the role of women came into forefront. Although they are backward community and weaker section of the society, quote unquote, in most of the famous gender development indicators like Gender Development Index, Gender Empowerment Measurement, Gender Equity Index, and so on, but they strongly managed to survive through many traditional as well as modern crisis management techniques. In fact, with many traditional knowledge or skills of home management, women are not only self-reliant but can be backbone of the society where conventional economy and security system shutters and whole world results into a dark, depressed situation. That time women become stronger section of the society on the shoulders of whom world can rely. This international conference on gender security and world politics will try to address various contemporary security issues in global arena through gendered lenses. The goal of this conference is to improve the standards of the international community of academicians, researchers, scholars, and scientists by exposing them to the latest trends, developments, and challenges in this field. The picture you get from media, even from celebrity media, is very partial. People should know the picture of the actual field. Courtesy to Corona and Zoom technology that enables us to meet at a common platform and reimagining these changing dimensions of gender security and global politics in the pandemic situation. Around 450 gender security experts will join this virtual event from 20 countries. Total 367 Indian panelists will join from 291 academic institutes, colleges or universities of India, and 48 foreign participants will join from 31 academic institutes, colleges and universities of 20 countries, which are Afghanistan, Bangladesh, China, Fiji, Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Uzbekistan, Romania, Ukraine, Toronto, Cincinnati, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Nepal, and United Kingdom. Dear friends and colleagues, you can see we have an august gathering here in the inaugural session. We have very well-known gender security experts from all over the world like India, United Kingdom, Ukraine, Romania, and Bangladesh, from whom we can so much to listen and so much to learn. We have with us Dr. Juliet Coleman, Director, SecurityWomen, United Kingdom, Honourable Nishtha Satyam, Deputy Representative of UN Women, India, Honourable Professor Shireen Akhter, Vice-Chancellor, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh, Honourable Professor Chandrakala Padia, former Vice-Chancellor, MGS University, Rajasthan, and professor at Benares Hindu University, India. Professor Sanjay Bharadwaj, former chairperson, Center for South Asian Studies and former director, Energy Studies Program, School of International Studies, JNU. Professor Rajpal Budania, HOD, Department of Political Science, University of Allahabad, India. Professor Nali Vaiko Ladiasa, Vice Rector, Dnipropetrovsk State University of International Affairs, Ukraine. Professor Yeliena Prokhorova, Kyiv National Economics University, Kyiv, Ukraine. Dr. Aruna Martin, Vice President, International Institute for Human Security, and Dr. Sujit Kumar Datta, Associate Professor, Department of International Relations, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh, and Dr. S.R. Daga, Principal, SRKP Government PG College, Kishangarh, Ajmer, Rajasthan, India. Due to some urgent work, our welcome addressee, Dr. Dan Plitch, is unable to join this session, and he will join us at the valedictory session. Without much wasting time, now I want to invite our presidential addressee, Honourable Professor Shireen Akhter, University of Chittagong, for delivering the presidential address. Honourable Professor Shireen Akhter is current and the first female Vice-Chancellor of University of Chittagong. In 2020, she received Begum Rokeya Award, which is a Bangladeshi national honor conferred on individual women for their exceptional achievement. The award is given by Ministry of Women and Children Affairs, the government of Bangladesh, to honor the pioneering contribution of an individual in empowering women and raising women's issues. As a renowned academician and researcher, she received many other awards, some notables of which are Sahitya Puraskar, UNESCO Award, and many more. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, please unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Ma'am, it's again mute.
Unmute হচ্ছে না তো why
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম আবার মিউট হয়ে গেছে
Thank you, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
A very good morning to you all, dear participants. Greetings from the University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. I am very pleased to be part of the Indian Institute of Human Security and Governance, IIHSG, International Conference 2021 on Gender Security and Global Politics, which is held on February 25th to 26th, 2021. The conference is organized by the Indian Institute of Human Security and Governance, Delhi, in collaboration with Center for International Studies and Diplomacy, School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, and Department of International Relations, the University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. Gender security in this regard identifies the weakness of both women and men in our society and refers to providing security. Historical and existing international political scenario, gender inequality and vulnerability have affected women the most. An alternative way to consider insecurity through the use of gender-sensitive methods is to achieve economic security. Gender-based attitude can unravel the real impact of a human security policy on our self-social system. Because a mother leads her family in all important matters, By participating in the political processes, women influence themselves, their families, and above all, their society in various ways. In developed and developing countries, women participation in civil society and political parties are greatly increased. And this increase has created a responsive, egalitarian, egalitarian and democratic environment. Women around the world are still missing from national and local decision making bodies in a variety of ways. Despite representing half of the world's population, women make up less than 20% of the world's legislative. From inequality and violence to lack of support and resources, women face numerous challenges to participate in the civic and political life of their country. The father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was the pioneer of Bengali women's empowerment in Bangladesh in 1967. The Women League was established, and the Bengali women created the opportunity to participate in mainstream politics. After Bangladesh became independent, the Constitution of People Republic of Bangladesh guaranteed equal rights for women and all stages of state and public life and added powers to make special provision for the development of women in 1972. Following the model of the Bangladesh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, present Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has formulated numerous politics and laws to ensure gender equality, women's development and empowerment at all levels since she came to power, and has worked tirelessly to ensure that it is truly integrated and implemented at all levels. Although the political arena in Bangladesh is male dominated and very few women have been able to lead, the political empowerment of women in Bangladesh is remarkable. The government of political parties are much helping in political policy and women's inclusion in the National Assembly. For this political policy, reserved seats have been reserved for women in the National Assembly and local government in Bangladesh. In the present parliament, the Honourable Prime Minister, Speaker, and Leader of the Opposition are women. Out of 300 seats in the National Assembly, 50 seats have been reserved for women. One of two vice chairmen in the Upazila Parishad must be a woman. 1 in 3 seats of Union Parishad, municipality, and city corporation are reserved for women. According to the representation of the People's Order, RPU, 33% of each political party's representatives must be women. Women's Development Forum has been formulated to increase the power of elected women at the Upazila level. According to the Global Gender Gap report, Bangladesh has closer the gender gap by 72%, making it one of the top countries in the South Asia region. I hope that the knowledge gained through this conference will play an influential role and in ensuring future gender security. I wish all the success of this international conference. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful. Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful speech and your best wishes. Now it's my privilege to welcome our inaugural addressee, Dr. Juliet Coleman. She is founder and director of SecurityWomen Advocacy and Research Nonprofit Organization, calling for greater awareness of gender equality issues within the security sector globally and to promote the inclusion of more women. This is located in United Kingdom. She completed PhD on social and gender relations in Botswana and with the University of East Anglia in 2014. Has been a visiting scholar to the New School, New York and Stellenbosch University, South Africa. Currently completing research into the recruitment of women into the South African National Defence Force in conjunction with the Department of Defence and Stellenbosch University. Juliet is former president of UNIFEM UK, now UN Women UK, and former trustee and chair of the National Alliance of Women's Organization. She has a business background in HR management in the private sector and has run her own HR consultancy. She is a graduate of Exeter University and has a master's degree in strategic human resources. Over to you, ma'am, Dr. Juliet Coleman.
Thank you very, very much for that kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm Juliet Coleman, Director of SecurityWomen, an NGO advocating for a gender-balanced security sector, as has just been said. I'm currently based in the UK, locked down by the pandemic, as I guess many people in different places are. Before I start, I'd like to thank the organisers for inviting me to be part of this really significant event. And I'm looking forward to an interesting couple of days. I would especially like to thank Dr. Nandini Basisa from the Indian Institute of Human Security and Governance, and also SOAS and the University of Chittagong for being part of the organising of this conference. Security is highly gendered, and so is politics. I will talk today about the importance of women being equal partners in security across the board and how such little progress has been made in this regard. I will also explore the barriers to women's participation and leadership and the changing nature of conflict and the threats to human well-being. Firstly, I will talk about women in decision-making and at peace talks. I will then discuss women in cybersecurity, women in policing, in armed forces, and lastly, women in UN peacekeeping. As I said, security is highly gendered, estimated to be 97% male-dominated worldwide. Women have largely been invisible as security professionals. You'll forgive me for talking about men and women and not so much on the spectrum of genders or intersectionality, because the absence of any women from the sphere of security is stark. That is roughly 50% of the population. The origins for this come from traditional norms of social hierarchy and polarizing of attitudes in which men are seen as protectors and women as needing to be protected. And of course, men are on average physically stronger. Men are also seen as breadwinners for the family, which pushes women further into domestic, more home-based roles. This is particularly obvious today in India, where only 20% of women are in paid work, down from 33% in 1991. Is the lack of security also a contributing factor? We see the durability and pervasiveness of patriarchy across the world. There is a general lack of acceptance of the importance of women's roles in decision-making. Often this is due to the weight of tradition, the economic independence of women on men, the unequal share of family responsibilities, and the influence of religious extremism on society. The effort to bring about gender equality concerns every aspect of human life, and security is no exception. Research empirically points to the fact that the state of gender dynamics impacts peace and security, and that broadly, where a society is more gender equal, it is likely to be peaceful. And the converse to this, gender inequality, is likely to lead to more micro and macro violence and conflict. Nowhere is gender inequality more evident than in the security sector. The importance of a security sector that is responsive to all, diverse and inclusive, and above all, gender equal, based on the principles of human rights, ethical, professional, and properly trained, cannot be overemphasized. The rule of law and a democratic justice system is vital for a peaceful society. To put the concept of security into perspective, what could be more important than human security? I refer to the narrow sense of security as protection. It is a vital element of fundamental human well-being. What quality of life can be enjoyed if one does not feel safe and secure? The Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 16, arguably the most important goal, states, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. One of the indicators for this goal seeks the percentage of women and men who report feeling safe walking alone in the city or area where they live. This data is collected through various surveys. It would be interesting to ask further questions based on the nature of security in that neighbourhood. For example, would more female police officers make a difference? Would women and girls in particular feel safer? Another perspective on security is the changing nature of conflict. The historical dualistic nature of warfare between and fighting over territories has morphed into messy, multifactional civil conflict, as has been seen, for example, in Syria. Conflict is often about identity, tribal, and dislike and distrust of the other. It is a fight for power and control in which compromise has no place. Oh, but compromise and cooperation must become the preferred option as the only way to end conflict. Women have been sidelined in the majority of formal peace processes, whereas evidence has shown that where there is women's meaningful involvement, agreements are likely to be more comprehensive and sustainable. There is stiff resistance, as can be seen, for example, in the Afghanistan peace negotiations. Women are targeted, particularly those who are educated and trained, and who disrupt traditional and patriarchal norms. 2 women judges were shot dead by unidentified gunmen in Kabul as they travelled to their office in Afghanistan's Supreme Court. More generally, women who express views in the public arena are threatened with violence. I put to you an idea. Just as political elections around the world are monitored by independent election observers that are trained and entirely objective, so too could peace talks be monitored in a similar and objective way. And the standards to observe would include the meaningful and equitable participation of women. We are living in an interconnected world where international crime, cyber attacks, and global terrorism know no bounds. The spread of disinformation has reached new levels and has been labelled as the new form of warfare. This disinformation through various communication channels is influential and frequently damaging. Often it is consumed in the form of conspiracy theories. Cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing, rapidly evolving modern industries, and just as true for digital India as elsewhere in the world. Yet women are not nearly so involved as men. It is difficult to assess how involved women are because different studies come up with varying statistics. However, it's estimated to be around 20% globally. In India, Microsoft states this figure to be only 11%. The opportunities are there for women, but again, this sphere of work is seen as its own gender perceptions and stereotypes. It is important that young women and girls are encouraged to take STEM subjects and are reminded of female pioneers like Ada Lovelace, the world's first computer programmer. The importance of having a more gender-balanced workforce is critical to prevent bias, developing in such areas as artificial intelligence. Not only could gender discrimination become problematically embedded in IT infrastructure, but also significant drawbacks could develop in, for instance, the efficacy of facial recognition technology. Cybersecurity AI requires diverse data and context to act effectively, which is only possible with diverse cyber teams who recognize subtle examples of bias in security algorithms. In order to attract more women into cybersecurity, different countries have introduced a variety of programs. We have had Cyber Girls Club in Israel, cybersecurity summer camps in the US, and Girl Scouts developing cybersecurity badges, a career comeback initiative in Malaysia, Women in Security Awards in Australia, and in India in 2018, the launch of the Cyber Shiksha program designed to create a pool of skilled female cybersecurity professionals. We are hearing more about the significance of cyber warfare capabilities of states considered dangerous. At the beginning of the year, the United States IT systems in government's departments were hacked via a company called SolarWinds, and Russia was thought to be behind it, supposedly in an attempt to access sensitive data. The hacking of IT systems becomes ever more creative, with the potential to plant spyware that could be undiscovered until years later. Moving on from cybersecurity, physical security can be seen on a continuum. At one end, local policing, and right at the other end, special military forces. To begin with policing, as mentioned earlier, the rule of law and a democratic justice system is vital for a peaceful society. This starts with a functioning police service. Note I say service rather than police force. Policing should be, above all, service-orientated. In the United Kingdom, the originator of the concept of the police officer was Robert Peel, and his dictum was, "The police are the public and the public are the police," meaning that the police have to be part of the community, engaged with and accepted by the people, otherwise they don't succeed. The faith of the public in the police is imperative for maintaining law and order. Their first duty is to prevent crime happening. To take the phrase, "the police are the public," literally then, women should be 50% of the workforce. It is the legitimacy claim that legitimate institutions properly represent the constituency. Other arguments given for increasing women's participation are around the very differences of women from men. There is a danger of straying into essentialism. Are women more empathetic? Do they de-escalate conflicts more effectively than men? Maybe, but to operate under the myth that women are more peace-loving is a misrepresentation. What has been proved, mainly in business environments and contexts, is how the dynamics of mixed teams achieve more and are more successful than male-only teams. By increasing gender diversity, the police service is better able to respond to the safety and security needs of all people, women, children, and marginalised groups. But it is also about challenging the predominant culture of security institutions, which sustain power relations, supporting inequality and gender-based violence. A positive policing culture models positive masculinities. Security institutions are a mirror to society and reflect the values generally held in that society. In highly patriarchal societies, we are more likely to see male-dominated and gender-biased security and justice systems. Some women police scholars argue that all women units are the only way to increase women police in more traditional societies. However, critics say these units let male police officers off the hook. They don't have to learn to work with women, and they don't have to change any of their male practices. India overall has 9% of its policing roles held by women, according to a report last year. The statistics are particularly alarming since the Ministry of Home Affairs, as far back as 2009, set a target for women to be 33% of policing, and this was reinforced again in 2013. There have been some horrific high-profile cases of women being violently sexually assaulted. For example, only last year, a young 19-year-old woman from Uttar Pradesh died of her injuries. The police tasked with protecting women, no matter what class or caste, have covered up evidence, or worse still, carried out the crimes themselves. There is a sense that women bring it on themselves. This needs to be turned on its head. Urgent police reforms incorporating gender-sensitive institutional change, including prioritising the equal participation of women, are a necessity to meet the basic needs of all women and girls. Indeed, gender-balanced policing can provide role models to society which can help change societal expectations and bias around gender. As mentioned, security can be seen on a continuum, and we now move along the line from policing to armed forces. Not only do armed forces vary widely in terms of capacity and capability, but most importantly in their relationship to the state. Militaries are visibly paraded as an extension of state power, and very obviously male state power, as can be seen in countries like Russia and Belarus. Security is not only highly gendered, but highly political, and the purpose and remit for armed forces is broad. It is in human nature that people tend to opt for hard security and a government that promotes this when perceived or obvious threats exist and anxiety levels are high. People favour the strong man, especially when times are tough. Understandably so. To think otherwise is to reverse millennia of social norms and narrative which elevates strong men as protective. The language is polarising: strong versus weak, masculine versus feminine. Times are certainly difficult at the moment with the impact of COVID-19, which has laid bare human vulnerability. Women have shown effective leadership in so many ways, and the strong men have not done so well. In the UK and many countries around the world, the military has been called upon to tackle the pandemic, building temporary hospitals, helping with logistics, and running testing centres. The importance of a country having a well-trained professional body of people on hand when disaster strikes is paramount. Gender equality in armed forces requires a shift in institutional culture and a reorientation on how defence contributes to promoting gender equality in society. We are at the very early stages of women being admitted to militaries in different countries around the world. In 1985, Norway and Israel allowed women into all roles. This was followed by Denmark in 1988, and Sweden and Canada followed the following year. Not doing so, is this a form of gender discrimination? It could be argued that instituting this, not only would the number of women be increased, but it would gradually force a change in how society regards its armed forces. India has never had mandatory military service. It has the world's second largest army, also made up of volunteers. Little by little, women are breaking down the barriers to positions previously reserved for men. For instance, earlier this year, the Indian Army announced that women would be admitted to the Aviation Corps and train as pilots flying helicopters in conflict and peace zones. Lastly, let's talk about peacekeeping. Last year was the 20th anniversary of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, a groundbreaking resolution recognising the importance of women's participation as active agents in peace and security. It brought to attention how conflict affects women and girls disproportionately and called upon states to create their own national action plans. To date, about 85 countries have done so. How much better to train and utilise soldiers to keep the peace rather than train for war? UN peacekeeping relies on countries to commit to deploying their military and police personnel, as well as civilian specialists, to peacekeeping missions. There are currently 12 UN peacekeeping operations with roughly 90,000 peacekeepers, and the annual budget is less than 0.5% of global military spend. The breakdown between uniformed peacekeepers is roughly 10% police, 90% military. Current statistics show women are nearly 6% of military peacekeepers and 17% of peacekeepers. The United Nations has set targets to increase women's inclusion by 2028 to 50% of military and 20% of peacekeepers. These targets seem low and progress is slow. It is now 25 years since the Beijing Platform for Action, and as mentioned, 20 years since 1325. We really could have expected more progress. One bright area is an increase in the numbers of women in leadership roles as heads or deputy heads in UN peace missions, which is around 35%. The importance of women's participation to the overall effectiveness of peacekeeping is seen in many ways. Firstly, broadening the skill set of the peacekeeping mission and enabling greater access to communities where peacekeepers are engaged to protect. Female peacekeepers help empower women and girls in the host community and act as role models. Their very presence helps to reduce violence and conflict, and they build a greater sense of security, particularly for women and children. They help the understanding of the vulnerability of women and girls at risk of violence in conflict areas. Most importantly, in decision-making, female peacekeepers bring different experiences, backgrounds, and perceptions. The first open debate on women in peacekeeping was only convened in 2019 by Germany in its Council presidency. And in August 2020, the first comprehensive resolution on women in peacekeeping operations, Security Council Resolution 2538, was passed by the UN Security Council, initiated by Indonesia. It provides clear direction on how to increase the deployment of uniformed women in peacekeeping, from sharing of best practices for recruitment, retention, training and deployment of women in national militaries and police, to the provision of facilities for women, such as accommodation, sanitation, healthcare and protective equipment. Last year, a woman peacekeeper from India, together with a Brazilian peacekeeper, received the Military Gender Advocate of the Year award. Major Suman Gawani of the Indian Army was a military observer deployed with the UN mission in South Sudan. She educated 230 UN military observers on conflict-related sexual violence. She also trained South Sudanese government forces. She is a real credit to India. To end, I would like to emphasize the importance of promoting gender equality as a prerequisite to sustainable peace and security. Security in all its forms is too important to leave only to men. The key points I want to leave you with are these. Ensure political support for change. Line up institutional management at the top to support the change. Instigate gender-targeted recruitment, retention and promotion policies. Support women with mentoring. Instill flexible work schedules and parental leave policies. Set targets, quotas, and monitor accountability through gender audits. Ensure laws against discrimination and sexual harassment are well implemented. Gather more data and carry out more research. And let's have more role models. Thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to the various speeches and the exciting panels that are taking place over the coming 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful speech and best wishes. We get many new information and dimensions of gender security and gender harassment from your speech. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now it's my privilege to invite our next speaker. As we all know, United Nations Women is the key organizations of security women throughout the world. I am really grateful and honored to welcome our keynote speaker, Honourable Nishtha Satyam, who have been leading one of the largest and most strategically important multi-country offices of the United Nations Women across India, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Maldives as Deputy Country Representative. She is working for expanding programming presence in frontier areas, including women's peace and security, disaster risk management, second chances education, cybercrime, and women's access to sustainable, decentralized, renewable energy. Previously, she was head strategic partnership, policy impact, and public relations of United Nations Women. She did MSc in economics from Nottingham University Business School. Over to you, Honorable Nishtha Satyam, ma'am.
Well, I have to be quite a slow learner. I'm still learning to unmute myself after 1 year of COVID. So clearly, good morning, everybody. It's my absolute privilege. My apologies that I seem to have arrived late, but I was told that my address would be at 10:40, between 10:40 to 11 a.m. So that's why I did. I had some pre-committed deadlines that I was attending to. But at the outset, I'm very glad to be here, and I'd like to extend my deepest gratitude and thanks to the organizers for inviting me. It is indeed a privilege and a great joy for me to represent UN Women in today's conference. I'm glad that we are seen as one of the most significant actors, really, in the conversation on human security and governance, particularly on women in peacekeeping. We as a world community have not yet achieved gender equality. If you really look at the Sustainable Development Goals, as per the own parameters that countries have set for themselves, there is not a single country in the world that can call itself a gender equal country. We're sitting in 2021, and the goal that we have is for 2030. So clearly, we're talking about a target that is indeed ambitious, that is going to take all of us to put a strong foot forward. And like they say, women across the world and men across the world probably have to take that leap of faith together towards gender equality. Talking of the peacekeeping and security sector, it's traditionally been seen as a man's job, and hence women's involvement in peacekeeping missions and security forces itself sometimes is in direct contrast of the mindset that underlays pre-existing inequality and discrimination. In the Indian public policy scenario, the strings of public decision and leadership are controlled mostly, like we know, by men. As compared to women, it has been several decades post-independence, but the representation of the women in Lok Sabha has risen only to 14%. Gender issues, that said, have been integral, have now occupied an integral place in the international landscape, with gender equality rightly now being seen as a human right, but blindsided owing to but we still remain blindsided owing to our traditional beliefs, norms, and the patriarchal structure of the society. In what was a very, very difficult moment year for all of us globally, 2020 was also a watershed moment in the history of gender equality. It was a timely reminder for the need for accelerated efforts towards the realization of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls in a global community, as we witnessed a confluence of anniversaries, a moment that we may have forgotten while attending to, of course, more pressing needs like COVID. But let me remind you that last year we witnessed the historic coming together of a confluence of anniversaries, 25 years of the Beijing Declaration, which I believe is the most progressive blueprint for advancing women's rights, 10 years of UN Women, which is a standalone commitment of the United Nations to address gender equality, 20 years of the UNHCR Resolution 1325, the unanimous adoption of the UN Security Resolution 1325 in the year 2000 was a watershed moment too in the peace and security world, recognizing the rising adversity of conflict on women and children. The UN chief in his April 2019 statement has also spoken about increasing the number of women peacekeepers, both civilian and informed, as a key priority area for UN peacekeeping. And we agree that it's not just a question of numbers, but also a matter of our effectiveness in fulfilling security mandates. A study, let me share a little data here. A study by OECD shows that the increased presence of women as cabinet ministers is directly proportional to the rise in public spending across many countries. This in turn leads to an increase of women in public life, resulting in lower levels of inequality and increased confidence in national governments. Talking of examples closer to home, given the most recent constitutional interventions, there has been a rise of women in local bodies, with more than 1 million women elected to the 3-tier Panchayati Raj institutions of local governance. Charu Sinha was the first female IPS officer to be appointed as Inspector General of the Central Reserve Police Force. in one of the most disturbed areas of Jammu Kashmir. But despite all these gains, the challenges remain. The Press Information Bureau data of 2019 reveals that the percentage of women employed in the Indian Armed Forces is only around 3.8%, about 13% in the Air Force and about 6% in the Navy. Women inhabit only 20% of decision-making in public and private realms. Further, worldwide, their visibility is merely 1 to 5% at apex positions in organizations. So essentially, what are we talking about here? While we have made, and I think the issue of gender remains paradoxical, while we have made great strides, and so has India, in ensuring and tabling gender equality as one of the most urgent issues of our lifetimes, of decades to come, we also see huge gaps that remain to be filled. And in this war against, from a parallel point of view, in this war against the virus, women were overrepresented in more affected sectors, in occupations that were at the front line of dealing with the pandemic. In India, women constitute about 47% of all healthcare workers and almost 89% of all nurses and midwives. Let me share an interesting anecdote with you here. Despite women constitute for 70% of the global healthcare force anywhere in the world, not a single PPE manufacturer has been manufacturing kits addressed, tailored to the average size of the woman across the globe. So clearly, despite all the rhetoric and all the conversation on gender, we're still falling apart. We're still falling through the cracks when it comes to action. UN Women is dedicated to work with a certain set of actors to ensure that these women are visibilized, their pain, their voices are captured in decisions that matter to the entire country. As UN Women, I'm really glad that we work very, very closely here with the Ministry of Defense, with CUPNK, to ensure that women are engaged at the front line. An interesting example from an all-women contingent sent in India in 2008 to Liberia, which was studied in detail later, tells us that more women at the forefront in UN peacekeeping also meant lasting change, lasting peace. It also meant lesser crimes and an increased trust between civilians and UN peacekeepers. So I think we're at a point in time in history where there's probably, there shouldn't have been any need to put forward the business case of having women in the front line and in apex organizations across the globe. However, we still continue to invest ourselves in establishing the business case for women being there, given that there's tons of information that we have access to, which has already established that relationship of what it means to have more women, what it means to have more diverse workforces, and what it means to have more women involved and take charge of decision-making from the front line. The essence of my brief has, I think, been immaculately put together in this quote by our executive director, Ms. Fumzile, who says, where women are engaged, peace outcomes are likely to be more sustainable and long-lasting. With women fully engaged, we will emerge stronger from the crisis. And today we're at a moment where we have the twin burden of protecting gains from the past and crafting a new normal. It would be too bad for us if we left women out of these conversations. And like I said, if women are fully engaged, we will 100% emerge stronger from the crisis. UN Women is committed to the cause, to be working with a variety of actors in the country to push the conversation forward in a way that we actually achieve what we set for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Nishtha Satyam ma'am, for your thought-provocative and lucid speech. You wonderfully described the world scenario and how the COVID situation affected women, and still we are getting discriminated. Thanks a lot. Now I want to tell you about our next speaker, who is delivering felicitation address, Honorable Professor Chandrakala Padia. She is former Vice-Chancellor, MGS University, Bikaner, Rajasthan, the first women chairperson of Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Rashtrapati Bhavan, Shimla, Himachal Pradesh. Professor and former head Department of Political Science, Benares Hindu University, Varanasi, India. She is former Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, BHU, former President, Society of the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla, Board of Education, MHRD, and member, Indian National Commission for Cooperation with UNESCO and MHRD. She delivered keynote and valedictory memorial, etc. address in many prestigious academic institutions and received many prestigious awards from all over the world. She authored 3 books, completed 8 postdoctoral research projects, and edited 10 books, and many more to say about her. But I am stopping here, and over to you, ma'am, Honorable Professor Chandrakala Padia. Ma'am?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nandini ji. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Nandini ji, for your very kind words. Why it's not coming? At the outset, I would like to congratulate all the speakers as well as the organizing team for such an interest, for choosing such a contemporary topic. Thank you very much. I have titled my paper as Resisting Conventional Theory of Security Through Feminist Lens. The conventional approach to security is fraught with male biases. The reason being the reason being that wherever, in fact, our entire mindset, all streams of disciplines, social sciences, everything what we teach in the class, what we utter in the class, it's all male biased. You see, all the values which we have defined in the society, they are male biased. I have been teaching in the class, you see, that how in history, and that has been said by most of the feminist scholars, to fight at the front is the sign of bravery, and these people are called and regarded as war heroes. But the women who suffer at the home front and brings up the children of that husband, she is never being regarded as war heroine. Do we ever regard her as war heroine? You see, in economics, for a long period of time, labor was defined only as that which brings wages. None of the women who were doing work at home, it was defined as labor. So in every field you see, whether it is right to liberty, equality, justice, everywhere you will find that the male virtues are being recognized. And this is the reason that the conventional theory of security, it was totally based on a male bias. For example, the realist school in international politics, which dominated ever since 1955, had a particular focus on conflict and security matters and became the primary subject matter of security studies. Fortunately, towards the end of Cold War, it decreased the importance of conventional realist theory studies and the assumption of the scholars. Further, most of the new conflicts emerged during the period among small states, which were of intra-state nature rather than interstates. Hence, during the 1980s, the realm of security studies began to widen its scope. Scholars now started to develop security agendas against the background of ethnic conflicts, failed states, internal security, and rising north-south borders demarcated by stability and conflict. The conventional theory of security was unable to deal with these developments in the arena of international politics. Not only this conventional approach was unable to handle the problem of internal security, which emerged as the greatest threat to the South. In such a situation, feminist scholars resisted the conventional approach and felt the need of an inclusive theory of security. Many of them were not merely worried about the marginalized population of the Western world, but were equally concerned with miseries of the people at margin in the so-called third world. However, they could discover a link. I'm coming to the third world perspective also. However, they could discover a link between the Western capitalist patriarchy and exploitation of the people in South. They agreed with the views of Brian Schmidt that the beginning of the 20th century, colonial reasons were not treated as the integral part of the given state, but located outside the society of the states. There was no rule of law, only anarchy prevailed. Such an approach helped North in establishing the fact that stability and democratic order can only be provided by the West. This created a North-South construction on a false premise. Thus, the state-centric foundation and assumptions of realist theory and its positivist rationalist methodology were exposed. It became clear that realist perception of state security behavior based on a rational choice model or natural science equilibrium models associated with balance of power was false and unjust. It totally ignored the issues of culture and identity, which should have been treated as an integral part of security issues. The supporter of this theory, Stephen M. Walsh, was strongly criticized by a number of feminist scholars, both in North and South, to name a few, Keith Cross and Michael Williams, etc. They alleged that Walsh generated an epistemic hierarchy and that permitted traditional security studies to set itself up as the legitimate reviewer of alternative themes. Edward Collodid alleges that Walsh's theory completely ignores the ethical or moral content. He supports people-centric approach, which would enable people to emancipate themselves from the physical, social, economic, and political constraints and allow them to work in their own chosen ways. Ken Booth also supports this approach. Tickner, whom I like very much, throughout supports this approach because of its inclusive nature. Tickner does not only support the critical theory, but adds a very strong feminist perspective to it. She adopts a multidimensional and multi-level approach to broaden the definition of security with an aim to end women's subordination and set an emancipator goal for them. She is the one who could explain how physical and structural violence come in the way of women's emancipation. She stands with those feminist thinkers who oppose the statist approach to security and consider gender as a category of analysis. It is only then, she asserts, that one will be able to understand how social structures, particularly gender hierarchies, negatively impact the security of both the individual and group. In fact, the proponents of critical theory have not supported the idea to include gender as a category of analysis, nor do they were able to tell something new beyond conventional and critical perspectives. It were only feminist scholars and thinkers like J.N. Tickner, Christine Sylvester, who could explain interrelationship between all forms of violence and the extent to which not only unjust social relations, but gender hierarchy lead to insecurity. They could uncover the hegemonic masculinity existing in the theories of security. They could also prove how a study of the relations between war and masculinity could help scholars to understand how the male-centric national security activities of the state were legitimized. These feminist scholars claimed that a feminist view of security should be evolved to understand the link between militarism and sexism, and also the relation between the high occurrence of violence in militarized societies and security for women. A study of the connections between war and masculinity permits us to introduce some new thoughts about how the national security functions through the state legitimized masculinity. For example, military personnel were trained to think that to be a combatant, one must first be a man. This connection between soldier and masculinity had been apparent throughout most of the history. It was further extended to civilian life, where being a war veteran was recognized as a sign of an ideal citizenship. This association of citizenship is incompetent to acquire. This association of citizens claimed that other kind of citizens, they are incompetent to acquire commanding positions. It means women were incompetent to acquire commanding positions. Further, due to the linking of citizenship with masculinity, the scholars stated that it were men only who could be given the charge of strategic planners. This is the reason strategic planners' modes of discourses were loaded with manly imageries. Hence, it was not an easy task for the planners involved in national security planning to articulate projects of feminine nature. This would mean for them giving priority to conciliation over coercive methods, which would result in challenging their own credibility among people. Further, the masculinity of war was based on the false assumption that women were being safeguarded by men in war situations. Such a belief, to my mind, was a complete myth. There is a need to rethink the concept of protection as a manner in which protection had conventionally been seen by state played a vital role in the reproduction of hierarchies together with gender hierarchies, resulting in the structural violence enabling states to claim that they provide security. Feminists therefore claimed that a feminist view of security could expand our understanding of the link between militarism and sexism, and would enable us to learn how high occurrence of violence in militarized societies result in lack of security for women. So I would like to conclude by saying that feminists have played a great role in resisting the conventional theories of security, and they are coming out, they are in the process of building a feminist theory of women's security, which is, I think, which is the need of the contemporary times. And for this, all the persons who are concerned about human beings, not only men or not only women, they have to come forward and build such a theory so that this conventional mode of security, conventional theory of security is completely gone. Thank you very much for giving me time to express my views. Thank you very much. I fully agree with the second speaker who said that our entire notion of security is gendered, and that is true. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Professor Chandrakala Padia, ma'am, for your wonderful speech. I hope your presentation will enlighten the research community about the feminist view of gender security. And also you have added your personal opinion on that. Thank you, ma'am. Now I welcome Professor Sanjay Bharadwaj to deliver a special address. Uh, he is former chairperson, Center for South Asian Studies, and former director, Energy Studies Program, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and Joint Secretary, Association of Asia Scholars. He did MPhil and PhD from JNU. He was SUSI Fellow 2018 at University of Delaware, USA. CASS ICSSR Fellow 2013 at Chinese Academy of Social Science, Beijing, China. Asia Fellow 2010 to 11 at University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. LCE SRT Fellow 2009 to 10 at London School of Economics and Political Science, London, United Kingdom. Fellow at Youth Exchange Program, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, Tokyo in 2002 to 3. He wrote many books on South Asia, India's foreign policy, identity politics, and many more to say about you, sir. I'm stopping here. Over to you, sir, Professor Sanjay Bharadwaj.
Thank you, Dr. Nandita, for your kind introduction. And I congratulate for organizing such an important webinar, particularly on the issues of women empowerment and gender issues in the global perspective. So I really congratulate you for this. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Unfortunately, I could not listen the earlier speakers that as I was busy in some other academic event. So, but what I'm going to discuss, I'm going to speak today. I won't take much time, but what exactly I would like to discuss women or gender empowerment in South Asia, and particularly in the context of Bangladesh. And because while I'm just looking that in the global gender gap index 2020 as well, I do find that none of the countries are, you see the global index rank out of 144 countries, I do find that only Bangladesh figures in among 100 countries of the world, and rest of the countries they are having their global ranks like 110. India is 112, and Pakistan, of course, is very far. It's one, and you can see Nepal, Bhutan, and all other countries, Sri Lanka, and all these. So I try to understand that what are the factors that how the Bangladesh has become better performer in the case of women empowerment. You know, let me first discuss one. Just a minute. Let me first discuss that how we do find that what do you mean about women empowerment. I'm not going to in detail about the theoretical aspects and all that. I would discuss more of empirical perspective of understanding women empowerment issues, particularly a case history of Bangladesh. While I'll see that what you mean about women empowerment in the definition of United Nation, they have 5 main components. Particularly, one is the developing self-worth among women is one of the component of the women empowerment. The second is gaining a right to make choices. That is the second very important component. Then third, it goes to the gaining access to resources and getting equal opportunity as a main equal opportunity as men, basically. So this is the third component. The fourth, having the power to control and regulate their own lives in personal as well as public realm. And the last component of the UN definition of women empowerment is that enhancing women's capabilities so that they can contribute towards a more just order. if you take the case of Bangladesh, and then I would discuss that how that Bangladesh has become a country that had been instrumental in women empowerment, and particularly the programs that had been fundamentally working in Bangladesh had been instrumental of women empowerment and poverty eradication. If I name is the Grameen Bank and Mohammed Yunus, they have been instrumental in the issues of. So I would give the examples that how Grameen Bank had been instrumental. Before going, let me discuss about Bangladesh. If you will say that the Bangladesh, of course, is a part of common ecological organic system of this region, though we are politically divided. If you see, Bangladesh is overpopulated, Muslim-dominated society. More than 90% of the population is Muslim. It is also prone to flood, cyclone, drought are the regular phenomena. But what we have seen in the recent past that this agro-based society is shifting to market economy, where skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled workforce is significantly contributing to the growth of the country. And you can see about $15 billion comes as remittances from the migrant workers working in different part of the world. Of course, the issue of corruption, bureaucratic delay, and lack of infrastructures are still impeding the GDP growth. But you can say Bangladesh is today the fastest economy of South Asia, or you can say in Asia as well, that had been performing very well. But you will also see that the issues of inequality as different levels, like between the or you can say that there's a division or divides between the society, as between the Asraf and Atraf, between the rural and urban, between the religio-cultural or tribal societies. But there are also gaps, and there are also divides between on the basis of gender. You can also see that Bangladesh being a fragile democracy in a way that had been under the military regimes for more about 1.5 decade, and later on also the military had been very important factors. But you can see that the confrontational politics, that the tolerance towards the oppositions had been a regular phenomena in Bangladesh. Then you can also see that still there are confrontations, there are problems of killings of the progressive forces, killings of bloggers, or you can say there are also extrajudicial killings. There are also disappearance of the people. That was more during the military periods, but later on also it has been followed. But still, you can say Bangladesh in the last 1 decade had become a stable political environment for the growth. And there is, the dichotomy has been created that the values are not that important. The goals are important. If the society is progressing enough, then of course the values will be institutionalized. But of course, if you will see that the economic performance, the issue of women empowerment, or giving the better opportunities to the people of Bangladesh, that the government is doing perfectly very good in case of other South Asian countries. Of course, there are question marks about the democratic performance of the government. While I'll coming to the women issue, you can see, that Bangladesh society is vertically divided into two forces, or you can say socio-politically divided into two forces. One believes in the linguistic, cultural, nationalistic constructs that is quite inclusive, and the other is the Bangladeshi nationalistic constructs that talks about the territoriality of the religion in a particular way, that Islam is the core of that. But you can see that divisions were very much high while the people of Bangladesh were fighting for their liberation, for their independence from Pakistan. And who were the most affected sections of the society? It was the women, it was the gender. So you can see throughout the history of Bangladesh, or you can say that history of East Pakistan, and you can see particularly, then you can see that women had been the sufferer, or you can say that the women has been the victim of time and again events. Particularly, you can see But women had also been instrumental of mobilizing the people. That popularly known as the Jamdani movement. They had led by two ladies in 1989, and they had forced the military regime, HM Irsad, to step down. And that after that, you can see from 1990 onward, Bangladesh has been ruled by the two ladies or women. But you can see the mobilizations of women or women empowerment had been very important. Even if you see in the political participations of the women, the Bangladesh stands seventh in the world, seventh position in the world. So Bangladesh women are doing very good, or having better positions politically, but still the patriarchal nature of the society had been dominating, or had been disrupting the women empowerment issues. I would discuss the other issues. If you will see, particularly that the process or the rise of Islamic extremism, or you can say the rise of fundamentalism in Bangladesh, had also been many times they have stopped the women to go out of house and to go for the educations and to the institutions, different institutions. But that has not been become successful. If you will see Jamaat-e-Islam's election manifestos, that they always talks about the women in a sense of that they should stay at home, they should not go in public places, they should not participate. But the women is always a strong force, had been always a strong force in Bangladesh, and had been instrumental of in the economic growth of Bangladesh, particularly while you're looking about the ready-made garment sectors, that largest workforce constituted by the women in Bangladesh, and that ready-made garment has become the largest export commodity for Bangladesh, and you can say largest earner for foreign remittance earner for Bangladesh. But there had been a constant or perennial threats from the fundamentalist groups, but you can see earlier these threats were at the macro level. You can say that the ruling elites, for the political benefits, they were symbolizing the Islamic ethos and values, all that. But and at the major level, of course, that was also that because there were decline of the scholarship in Islam, that has failed to give a true interpretation of the Quran, in fact, in a way, like you fatwa and all that, Taslima Nasri, Lajja, and you can all see that they had been, fatwa has been issued against that, because of the true Islam has not been teached to the people, and there is a problem, or you can say there is a decline of scholarship in the Islamic teaching. But what happened in the last two decades, or you can say after the globalizations and privatizations, while the workforce had started going to different parts of the world, that people of Bangladesh, particularly the unskilled and semi-skilled labor force, has come into contact with the Arabian world, and what happened, that they had started authenticating the Islamic ethos and values with the Makkah and Medina, that, or you can say that has created a one kind of conflict or contestations between the Arabian type of Islam or the Persian type of Islam. You can say that the Bangladeshi Islam, Bangladeshi the religious ethos are quite syncretic, quite progressive, quite inclusive. But since they had come in the contact with the Arabic type of Islams, and that has promoted the Wahhabi kind of Islams, the direct impact had been on the women of Bangladesh. Still, there are strong movements, particularly from the Bangladesh Mahila Parishad, had been instrumental in mobilizing the rights of for the rights of the women. They are fighting against the triple talaq system. They are fighting for the equal rights in the property of the family to the women. These kinds of fights that had been led by the Bangladesh Mahila Parishad. Let me come with the point that why still Bangladesh is better in the sense of women status and women empowerment issues. if you will see, I would come with the certain data and certain figures, then I would conclude. I would not take much time. First thing, if you will see the politically, and or you can say in the reservation or in education system, in job, that that Bangladesh provides 10% reservation for the women in bureaucracy, and that gives a good place to women to work in the bureaucratic systems. In educational job also, like 60% quotas for the women in primary school teaching jobs. Not only that there have also been relaxations in the qualifications, like female, if the female is HSC, she can get a job, but male has to be graduate to get a primary school teaching job. And or you can say one more very important initiatives had been taken Bangladesh government, that there are free education for women up to graduations. That is encouraging the women to go and study in Bangladesh. So you can see in the education system or in job systems that women had been given or had been promoted in a way that they can have equal opportunities or they can have equal share. That basically fits in a way that the women basically that they are as per UN, the development worth among women, or gaining a right to make the choices, or you can say that enhancing women's capability so that they can contribute towards a more just order. That this kind of reservation in education and jobs had certainly empowered the women of Bangladesh. The second point that I would say, if you see the legal empowerment of women, the legal empowerment, that there is no equal rights in property. Of course, there from 1961 Islamic law of property, female has half the rights as compared to her brothers in property. That discrimination. But I said the Bangladesh Mahila Parishad is forcing government to make to bring the law and pass the bill in favor of the women so that they can have equal rights in the property. And but you can see the participation in the political participations, that I said that Bangladesh is 7th position in the world. The women has about 50 seats reserved in the parliament of Bangladesh, that we do not have in India. We are fighting to get the 33% reservations for the women in the parliament, but it happens while 33% women comes in the parliament, 33% male goes out, and that is not accepted to the major dominant political forces in India, and that has not been implemented. But in Bangladesh, 50 seats are reserved for the women. Even you can say in the local bodies like reservation in Union Parishad, 33% reservations are for women. The Union and Jilla Parishad's vice president position is reserved for the women. But you can say that no reservation on the apex level post has been witnessed in Bangladesh. Awami League and BNP, they comes with the promises in their manifestos that they will be given 33% positions in the party positions, but has not been in case of Bangladesh. But I would come very interesting point. In India also, you find that many things, many measures, political, legal, and educational and job had been adopted. But in Bangladesh, the law abiding, basically that law implementation mechanism is very strong, very pertinent in a way. Let me quote one example. There were issues of acid attacks and violence in the society of Bangladesh. It is a South Asian problem, but I'm talking in 2002. You can say the government has come out with a law against the acid attack and acid violence. They have passed two laws basically. One was that punishment up to death sentence in the category of heinous, and that they have put this crime in the category of heinous crime. And second, that in regulated sale in the open market, that the purchaser to procure the license. The two measures had been very effective in case of Bangladesh. Of course, there were also fast-track prosecutions and punishment, or seize the license and up to 20 lakh taka fine was supposed to be implemented. You can see that the cases in 2002 was 500, has come down in 2017, 2018, about 35 or 40 cases, means that there is 80% decline in the acid attacks in Bangladesh. So law implementation is very, very efficient, very important aspects of the implementations or bringing equality in the society. And this is the reason that Bangladesh is falls in the 50th position in the global index rank or in the gender gap, where India and Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bhutan, they are beyond 100. Or I would also say that they are that Bangladesh had also been performing very well in other sectors. They have improved, in fact. However, in health and survival, Sri Lanka is better than Bangladesh, but Bangladesh is better than India in many cases, if you can say health and survival or education attainment or economic participations and opportunities to the women, that Bangladesh is better than India in many cases. Now, the final point, I would not go in detail, but I would just sum up with that the women empowerment through self-reliance. And that is very important. Mobilizations, particularly that the NGOs, or Bangladesh is home to the largest NGO of the world. In the NGOs, particularly the Grameen Bank, had been very important in poverty eradication and women empowerment. They have started from 1970, but in 1990, what they have started giving microcredit to women, or that has been given loan or microcredit, and that the women had been the impressive repayment systems, and then he had given full value to the women, or particularly that he has Muhammad Yunus has made women as the target group because of their impressive repayment, or because of their modesty or submissiveness and humility, or you can say responsiveness and their culture. So you can see by this around 8 million borrowers are women in Grameen Bank today. That constitute 97% of the women in 8 million people, and they generates about 100 million. They generates about $100 million revenue in a month. That's an impressive data.
করছি তো হচ্ছে না sir please unmute yourself.
Okay, how much time I have?
Sir, you can speak. We are enjoying your speech.
No, but I would say, so you can see that this Grameen Bank had made basically the women as partner in entrepreneurship, or you can say that they have been shareholders in the Grameen Bank, and that really empowered the women in Bangladesh. And what sense of what the UN is talking, that the women's sense of responsibility, or you can see the sense of empowerment and sense of or in the, you can see their share in the decision making at the household and the business had drastically improved in case of Bangladesh. However, there are criticism about that it is promoting the neoliberal ideologies, or it is promoting the Western capitalist ideology or welfarist schools of thought, and that also been criticized, that the loan does not reach to the poorest of the poor. But if you will see that by about 8 million peoples as the partner in development they are 97% are the women. Really is it's an example before the world community that how a Muslim dominated society where are a number of political problems, environmental problems, cyclone, flood, there are other things, but in that the women had been a performer for the economic developments, for the political developments in education sectors. They had been, that has set an example before the international community or globally, that how a society has provided a base or a place to the women to work along with the man, and that has been instrumental in minimizing the gaps, gender gaps between the men and women, and that many other countries try to implement this. But there are certainly you can say this system does not attack on patriarchal culture of the society. Men are still masters in the family, and the women are source of income, means of getting loan along with the liabilities of repayment upon them. That's very critical issues. There are a number of studies that the men, they are using women in a way to get the loan or loan from the Grameen Bank, and it becomes the liabilities. And while you are not repaying, that responsibility comes to the women becomes victim from at the home as well as at the workplace, because if she fails in the repayment, and that increase the domestic violence as well. There is one study says that if a loan has been given to the women, what happens at the home, that it shows that only 30% of the women who are the borrowers, 30% of women, they significantly control that loan, that the credit for their business, for their empowerment. 30% only. 30% women has no control on the loan had been given to, or credit had been given to the women. And you can see 40% the loan or you can say the credit is basically controlled by the family. So moreover, you can say that there are good results. More than 50% women still they are having because of the family controls. Then women say is always their decision making or decision making powers increased in the family, and that certainly improve their positions in the society, in the family, or in the country. So, but still there are problems with that. I try to bring all these data that yes, Bangladesh has been a case to a case study before the world community, that how they have been successful in the women empowerment issues through different programs, particularly that the microcredit program has been instrumental in empowering the women, and how the women had been, there are a number of examples, number of things that had also I can discuss. But in brief, I would say that the women, they have been really beneficiary, and because of the women issues, or because of the government support, and because of their place in the business or ready-made garments, they have really been empowered. But certainly there are some more problems has also arisen because of the workforce, or because of the incentives, or you can say due to the workload, the female school dropout has increased. That is a concern, that how you can balance, because it's a developing country, and while you are getting incentives and family feels that yes, she can go and she can work and she can mobilize, whatever she is deprived to go for the schools. So that has also, study has also pointed out that because of that, this kind of economic or commercializations of or women being a biggest workforce, the school female school dropping has increased. That's particularly the daughters and daughter-in-laws had been involved. I think these are the issues that we need to come out still about the patriarchal cultures, about the using or forcing women to making them an instrument to bring the loan for the development of the country. But still, Bangladesh is a case before the world community that how they are in the 50th positions in the world in comparison to other South Asian countries. They are not, none of them are 100. Thank you very much for giving Nandini for this opportunity. I try to convey what I understand. I'm not much expert on women and gender issues, but since I study closely Bangladesh, so I try to understand how the Bangladesh women are doing globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sanjay Bharadwaj, for your wonderful deliberation. As a student of South Asia, I really enjoyed your speech and learned a lot about the ground scenario of women's security, patriarchal society, and political situation in Bangladesh. Thank you, sir. Now, I heartily welcome our guest of honor, Dr. Aruna Martin, who is an anti-discrimination and gender expert. She is senior advisor in international relations within the Romanian government and parliament on behalf of National Agency for Equal Opportunities, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, and National Council for Combating Discrimination. She has been awarded the Women of the Year 2015 in Romania for defending and promoting women's rights, and very recently, Women of the Decade in Security and Conflict Transformation 2019 in the frame of the annual Women Economic Forum. Today, her topic of address is structural and sexual violence against women and R2P. I heartily welcome our guest of honor, Dr. Martin, to deliver her address. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everybody. Could you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning and congratulations for organizing a new event with such a great audience with so many people. I see also somebody in aula. And I feel like we approach and we are closer to normality. I shall talk today about responsibility to protect and structural violence against women. In response to failing to prevent or bring to a standstill genocides in 1990s, the concept of responsibility to protect, adopted in 2005 at the United Nations Summit, emerged as the best solution for the international community to tackle the much debated topic, the violence and its apex. 4 indicators were included in the text, namely genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. Along the same line, the UN member states convened the sexual and gender-based violence must be dealt with within a similar manner with other forms of violence already covered by the reference literature. It was the preeminent time, if not a bit late, for the officials to admit the momentousness of mainstreaming the above into R2P prevention agenda. Its earlier counterpart, Women, Peace and Security, shared the same vision and mission with responsibility to protect in terms of gender matters and seemed the best partner in this coalition. Back in 2000, Women's Peace and Security, a landmark in the women's rights, pioneered in correlating conflict prevention, gender inequality, contribution of women to the world peace. However, their agendas could not find a connecting dot due to misperceptions and limitations of knowledge exchange between theoreticians and practitioners. There are hopes through that the two can be still brought together on the same site by having them persist in preventing mass atrocities, via adopting gender-specific indicators in early warning frameworks, so as forces countries at risk. When talking about gender, women are the first choice since they are barely referred to the context above. Some authors believe that the level of violence against women is the best prognosticator of a country's peacefulness. Hence, if data on their rights and violence targeting them are inserted into early warning frameworks, this action can very well lead to better prediction about sexual and gender-based violence and other atrocities. There is an unexpected yet real conjunction between women's lives and the state of conflict in certain countries. To start with, everyone can agree to the fact that societies are hyper-masculinized and militarized, leaving no wiggle room for women's voice. Despite being often neglected, women seem to be giving the tone to complex situation, use of sexual gender-based violence in conflict and non-conflict settings. The list of gender-sensitive indicators features female education, impunity towards sexual and gender-based violence, more frequent kidnapping, sex work, domestic violence, and female heads of households. Even if theoretically adopted, women are still at risk as vulnerable population, along with children and elderly, solely conducted to sexual violence and reproductive rights. There is an orchestrated action leaving women out of the indicators compiled only to mention them under human development, governance, demography, access to medical care, equality and protection under law, school completion rate, maternal mortality, adult literacy rate, but not a word about security or crime. A gender-blind early warning system is a sure path to harm for women and prejudice to gender relations. In a conflict, women are more aware of danger. They know intimate details about the operations, are better mitigators in the interethnic alliances. The literature in gender-sensitive early warning makes a difference between root causes, warning about the state fragility, fertility rate, women in parliament, and proximate causes, a barometer for surging tensions such as rape, domestic violence, sexual abuse by authorities, killing, abduction, sex work, survival sex, restrictive laws, triggering changes in gender roles, and so on. The gender-sensitive warning indicators are not solely aimed at women and girls, but they can give us a perspective on the overall level of aggressiveness in society, visible in vandalism, gangs, harassment, among others. The indicators can be classified into more categories such as demographic, human rights and security, political and institutional, economic and social. The demographic class, to begin with, the demographic class comprises male, female life expectancy at birth, fertility rate, access to medical care and family planning, percentage of HIV/AIDS for adult females, displacement of women and refugee flows, female-headed households, STI areas under the control of armed groups. There are nations denying their female infants the right to live. The access to medical care depends on wealth, while family planning is an unknown concept in other nations. Rape on young girls by infected males, multiple partners imposed in a sex trade activity raise the percentage of HIV/AIDS persons that do not have the possibility of a timely treatment. Fearing the invasion of armed groups, women and children flee their land in search for safety, often at the hands of war's leaders. Rivalry between groups of people will see males being eliminated, hence women will take over their duties and watch for those left behind. In terms of human rights and security, there is a prevalence of sexual, domestic violence, freedom for male perpetrators, female genital mutilation, forced birth control, crisis center and hotlines for battered women, conflict-related death, honor killings, sexual abuse by officials, human trafficking, discriminatory practices, and attacks against indigenous people. Majority of sexual and domestic violence cases imply a female victim, as they are more prone to being abused in immediate or acquired family. Female genital mutilation is still conducted in some parts of the world by women themselves on little girls. Crisis center and hotlines have been opened for an easier access, but they are still to reach their potential, since women cannot or will not call to ask for help. Honor killing happen even in civilized societies to punish a female not complying with the family courtship rules or marrying someone out of their class. Human trafficking always involving female victims, a vicious octopus and a source of income for shady males. For the political and institutional factors, we have female suffrage, women in parliament, military resistance to women's participation in peace processes and negotiations, forced recruitment, use of women to obtain information. Even though some indicators here might look like a step forward to women's independence, they still carry a negative connotation. The suffragettes were disowned by their families, shunned by the society. The governmental institution took hundreds of years to say yes to women who are still underrepresented. Female soldiers are raped, bullied, not welcomed within army, even going through the same training as males. Women are not part of the delegations taking part in political agreements, since they are perceived as too weak to enforce their ideas, but they are to this day sent into the enemy's den to pump secrets out of them. The economic factors include a feminization of poverty, include an increased economic burden placed on women, engagement of women in prostitution, precious metals industry, pressures to migrate for work, avoiding markets due to personal security, bright prices, equal wages. Women have initiative, hence they will find work faster after layoff than males, as they feel responsible for the family. Prostitution. Prostitution is a greedy profession, showing thousands of women and keeping them hostage for various reasons. Women would work in dangerous industries like extracting and selling precious metals. Most women are the first to travel to another country for work. Political instability leading to attacks frightening women. Hence, they will not be willing to be in the open, not even for food shopping. Dowries are still in use in some countries where a girl is seen as a merchandise for which her family has to receive money, cattle, jewels in exchange upon marriage. Equal wages has been the apple of discord for the longest time between women, men, and their employees. For the same position, same duties, men will be paid at least double compared to women, even if women work harder and are better managers of time and resources. Another class referred to the social factors, namely the average level of female education, interethnic marriages, threats to female teachers, lack of participation in public events due to security issues. Women have always thought to belong in the house with the children, so education has never been designed for them. If ever let to attend school, they would be early dropouts. In an interethnic marriage, the woman is the one taking the hit from her family and circle of friends, workmates, and community. In a school, male teachers are thought to be the best educators. Female teachers are threatened and told to stop coming to their job place. There are rare cases when women carry a gun around. Her presence in large gatherings for various occasions is therefore hampered by security issues. All the above are as many reasons as to watch the presence of women in all societies, as they seem to be the tipping point in the state of things, and how to monitor their existence and everything surrounding them other than inserting pertinent provisions in the legislation of all levels. The early warning system helps to a certain extent with our capacity to predict atrocities where an extended period of time brings better results. A good interpretation of the existing causes is paramount, and we need to take into account a combination of factors put to work: our knowledge about the parties involved, the timing of our observation. Violence is not a permanent situation and does not fare evenly all the time. There are let-ups and peaks in occurrence, and women are the perfect barometers to guide our findings. In 2011, relevant peace-seeking entities developed a framework of early warning indicators specific to conflict-related sexual violence after consulting the indicators in use, the reference literature, and examination of the past conflicts. These frameworks will visibly enhance our reading into the targeted environment and elicit an examination of the changes underway. The indicators considered three categories. First, potential risk, sexual violence in the medium to long term. Second, impending risk, immediate future. And third, ongoing sexual violence under the radar going unnoticed. And the indicators were structured around 6 pillars correlative to dimension of the problem and the entities required for action. First, military security. Second, social humanitarian. Then political legal, economic, media, and health. Just by looking at the previous list, we see the magnitude of women's entanglement in the network of each country. The changes in all the factors mentioned earlier are signs of a shift to a different condition. They can be causes for significant reversals, thus reversing the polars of this fickle world. Women are the core of this living system, and its imbalance only means house. Ostrich-like skepticism of the officials in thinking the early warning as ineffective and the challenges to implement such system, sensitivity of certain data, religion-motivated unavailability, confidentiality reasons, keep the wheels of progress still, hence turning the entire world into a tickling bomb that can only be diffused by women. Thank you for your attention. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your wonderful speech. I really in your speech that I forgot to unmute myself and start my video. Thanks a lot, madam. You actually touched a very important component of gender security, that is structural and sexual violence against women. Thanks a lot for your speech. Now I'm happy to invite our next speaker, Professor Yeliena Prokhorova. She is PhD in economics and currently professor at Department of Management Economics, Kyiv National Economic University, Ukraine. She has 25 years of teaching experience in several parts of the world. She has done several projects and published research papers and books. She is editorial board member of several reputed journals also. Her today's topic of special address is gender security at the labor market in Ukraine. Over to you, ma'am, Professor Prokhorova Yeliena.
Yes, thank you very much, Nandini. Dear colleagues, nice to meet you here, and thank you very much for this honorable for me invitation. And let me show you my screen, my presentation. Do you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, I can see. We can see.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Yes, let me start about gender security at the labor market in Ukraine. I'll give you some statistics on gender security and equality in our country, then about COVID-19 influence on gender equality, and finally an example of our university gender initiative. There are a lot of dimensions of gender security at employment. It is security at the hiring and dismissing, at career development, equal payment for equal work, sexual harassment, and much more dimensions. What factors affects the behavior of employees at organizations at the labor market? Of course, it is country's culture, traditions, religion, legislation, and organizational culture in each company. Traditionally, women in Ukraine play a very important role in all spheres of social life. At the picture, it is our former Prime Minister, and she took part in a few president elections in our country. She didn't win, but she took part, and it was successful, her company. So it is very, very famous, well-known woman in our country. As usual, according to the legislation, women and men have equal rights in all fields of the life, including employment too. But what's about real situation? And according to statistics, the most of employees, maybe more than half of employees are women in our country, but only 40% among the leaders, among decision makers are women. In different areas, there are different situations with women's participation in employment. For example, in retail trade, there are more than half women individual entrepreneurs. In such field of specialization as hairdressing or beauty salons, there are 94% of women individual entrepreneurs. So such industries and spheres are more employed by women. From another point of view, there are a lot of industries which are traditionally more men represented, such industries as transport, construction, agriculture, mining, and energy industry. Such areas as education, healthcare, postal and courier activities, libraries, archives, they are more represented by women employees. The share of women may be nearly 80% at these spheres. We have a big gender pay gap. It is nearly 22% in average, and it is different from minimum 3 and 6% in education to maximum 40% in postal and courier activities. What is the reason of this big gap in payment? Traditionally, women have a lot of unpaid responsibilities and unpaid work, and that's why women usually have lower incomes, less property, and they more rely on public services and social security. What's about COVID-19 influence on gender equality in our country? There are more women in industries for which state budget financing was reduced. And of course, as a result, women which are good represented in these industries, they have problems with employment and with income due to COVID-19 limitations. And as I said before this, more women are employed in such industries as hotel and tourism, education, restaurant, and the same sectors. And we had very strong quarantine limitations in our country from the 12th of March to the 12th of May in our country, and all hotels, restaurants, cinemas, theaters were closed at this period. So there was no employment in these spheres for both men and women, and people was there are a lot of unemployed in these sectors in this period of time. And also public transport was closed at this period of time too. So it was a great loss for the economy at all, and for women entrepreneurs and employed women too. You can see that registered official unemployment during the January-April period. I said that from March the 12th, it was very strong quarantine limitations were used, and the share of unemployed women is 57%, and employed are only 25% of women. And finally, as indirect effect of quarantine limitations to the women employment and incomes is that, as usual, women have much less savings than men, comparing with men, and that's why women entrepreneurs have limited access to credit because of lack of property as collateral. There are nearly 80% of women who are employed in the health care, and as a result, women make up the majority among infected with coronavirus in our country. It is the next result, negative result of COVID-19 pandemic. There are 2/3 of the total number of retirees in our country. They are women. And if the gender payment gap is nearly 22% at average, the gender gap in pensions is average 30%. So the most of pensioners are women, and they have less pension comparing with men. We have a military conflict at the east of our country during more than 5 years. And according to different estimations, we have more than 2 million internally displaced people in our country. And you can see that 58% of these internally displaced persons are women, and nearly 80% among them are unemployed. So it is a very serious situation, and the state have to help these women who are in such situation. So I can conclude that according to the legislation, women and men have equal rights in all spheres of life in our country. But according to the statistics, the situation is not so bright, and our task is to bring legislation about gender security and equality into practice. And now I want to give you an example from my university experience. It is a leading university in economic education in our country. And the most of employees are women in our university, but among management decision-making, you can see that only one woman among 5 is vice rector. The rector, of course, is man, and only one woman is faculty dean among 10 faculties and faculty deans. And we have a joint with Germany project, which is financed by European Union Erasmus Plus program, Female Leadership in Academia and Management. It's named Flamingo. And the main purpose of this project, of these trainings, is to empower our women who are employed at administrative positions at our university and to develop their careers. So we'll do all our best to improve situation with gender security and equality in our country. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, ma'am. Really, your speech is really enriching, and I think it will help many ground level researchers of labor economics. Thank you, ma'am, for your very various facts you provided about Ukraine. Thanks a lot. Now,
Thank you very much.
our next speaker was Professor Larissa Nalivaiko, but she just messaged me that she has to take part in some government meeting as she is part of governmental committee. So she can't be join in our sessions. So I am now inviting Dr. Sujit Kumar Datta to deliver vote of thanks. He is Associate Professor, Department of International Relations, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. He did his PhD from School of Political Science and Public Administration at Shandong University, China. Before that, he had worked at the BRSC Training Division as a faculty member. He has authored several articles and book chapters on different issues in the renowned national and international peer-reviewed journals. He has presented several research papers in international seminars and conferences in China, India, Malaysia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. In the COVID-19 pandemic period, he had attended several international webinars as a resource person in several countries. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, the last session was very informative, valuable, and engagement. I would like to thank the Indian Institute of Human Security and Governance to organize this international conference on gender security and global politics. This conference is organized by the Indian Institute of Human Security and Governance, Delhi, in collaborating with the Center for International Studies and Diplomacy, School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, UK, Department of International Relations, the University of Chittagong, Bangladesh, and SRKP Government College, Rajasthan, India. I'm very happy to thank all collaborating partners to be part of this conference. I express my heartfelt thanks to Honourable Chief Guest, Professor Dr. Shireen Akhter, Honourable Vice-Chancellor, University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. Inaugural Speaker, Dr. Juliet Coleman, Director, SecurityWomen, United Kingdom. Keynote speakers, Honourable Nishtha Satyam, Deputy Country Representative, UN Women, India, Bhutan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. Felicitations speaker, Honourable Professor Chandrakala Padia, former Vice Chancellor, MGS University, Bikaner, India. And special addresses by Professor Dr. Sanjay Bharadwaj, Professor Dr. Raspal Budania, Professor Dr. Yeliena Prokhorova, and guest of honor, Dr. Aruna Martin. Last but not least, I would like to thank Dr. Nandini Basista, the convener of this conference, for her continued support and cooperation. I believe that this conference ideas will help us to ensure gender security, which may make equal rights for all. And I hope that the knowledge gained through this conference will play an influential role to ensure future gender security in all over the world. I request all of you to attend our next sessions. Thank you very much. to be part of this conference. Thank you very much.